Okay. Just recorded, started recording. We are going over AJAX and rendering data with React by making AJAX calls. So I'm going to show you what we're going to be doing first, kind of break that down, because the beginning portion of this lecture is, I'm going to say, probably a flashback to you learning AJAX. You already learned how to make calls. You understand the gets and the puts and all of that, and the tools. You had used jQuery to do it, but there's other tools that we can use, things like Fetch and Axios, to make those requests also. List of third-party APIs, something we've seen in the past, API keys, all things that you're familiar with. So much of the just beginning portion of the lecture is in regards to those concepts that you already know how to do. Once again, we're going to make an API call. You'll be like, oh my God, that's crazy easy. We've done that several times. So what I wanted to do is show what we're going to be doing, and even this might look familiar. This is going to look familiar, actually. You worked with the OMDB API before. So if I was to type in Superman, I get Superman, right? I don't know. I'm going to try Batman. Let's see what I get. Do I get Batman? The Batman of Shanghai. Okay. I'm getting data, right? Which means I'm making an API call in order to get this data. So one thing that I kind of wanted to do is, now that we have this, right? We have this thing. I'm going to annotate here. Maybe we can draw a little bit and see if we can make some sense of this. Maybe I'll do blue here. If we had to break this down, right, what would be our main component? Someone give me a main component. How about Sarah? What would be our main component? It's easy.
App.
Yeah, right? Main component app, correct? All right. Do you see the potential for any other components? Jose, any other components based on what we see here? If I was to kind of break this thing down, you know, I mean, I see this thing like this, right? Here's a thing. That seems to be app.
The search bar.
Okay. What would the whole search bar, right? Submit button and everything, right? What do you think the search bar is? What kind of HTML element is it?
A form.
It's a form, right? So I would say, hey, we have this thing here. That could be, once again, it could be another thing, or it just could be a form inside of that, right? I'm just trying to break this thing down. When I look at this, I see reusability. That's when I design these things. I design them for reusability. So I would say, okay, so maybe there's a form. Cool, form. What else? What about Ian? Do you see anything else that may be a component that we could possibly have as a component?
Not on this screen.
Okay. What about, I don't know, Christian, do you see anything possibly as? Once again, you may not see it and you may see it.
So I would say probably the actual search result. So like that whole block title all the way down to plot.
Right? That could be. That could be maybe like, I don't know, movie, info. Once again, I'm just taking something and I'm trying to tear it down to see what it could potentially be. Right? That looks like it. Now this ultimately is not what's in the lecture notes. The lecture notes has form as just HTML inside of app, but movie phone has its own component. But when I look at this is what I say. I see form as its own thing, and I see movie info. That doesn't necessarily mean that could be what it is. It could be, something like this. Once again, the other design that's in the lecture could be app, and then app has a form element that's going to be rendered in there, and then app then has the movie info thing. That's the structure inside of the lecture notes. I would prefer if we could create the first one, more components, passing things around, right? Wouldn't we have to, in this instance, wouldn't we have to pass something up? What do you think we would need to pass up here? You know, I don't like that color. It shouldn't be green. It should be, I'll do gray. If we captured a form, what would we be passing up?
The searched movie title.
Yeah, the title, the data, right? We would search the data. So this would get the title of the movie. So we'd have to like push the title up here. And then in app would be responsible for kind of making that API call, right? It's going to make this API call and the results are going to return and it's going to have the information, right? And then it is going to pass down to movie info, all of the info as props, right? We're all familiar with props. So where does state live?
In the app.
Yeah. So in the app, move this down. Can I get this thing out of the way? In the app, this is where we would have state, right? Okay. And then the state is going to contain some information about the movie, right? So here's state. We're going to have some information about the movie. We're going to pass that down to movie info. Looks pretty solid so far, right? I mean, from what we built, that looks like something we could possibly figure out the API stuff. I'll walk you through that. But if I asked you to build something like an app and pass down something like a title, even just mock data to movie info, you could probably mock up something that looked very similar to this. An image, some H1, H2, paragraph, right? Nothing like out of the ordinary would you like struggle with, okay? Now, what if we needed to create methods, right? What methods do you see here that need to be created in app? So I'm going to put here methods. What is our target? What is the event that we're listening for? And what is going to be the name of the method? Okay, it's a little sloppy. I really do like the whiteboard though. Like I'm a whiteboard person. Need the whiteboard. What target are we hitting? What's the first target? Do you think? And by target, I mean element. Maybe I'll put that here. You know, what's the element that we're going to target that we are then going to put an event upon? What about that? Ryan, what do you think? What's the first target?
I know we're going to need a function for our API call. I'm still not entirely sure what you mean by target. Do you mean where we're putting the function or?
Well, let's say this. We have at least two events. What events do you see here?
Well, we need to make an API call at some point with the data in the form. So
okay.
When we click on that submit button, ideally, it's going to send up the information to the app, which
Sure.
will then create your API call effectively.
Okay.
And then with that.
So what would be the target of that? What HTML element are we targeting?
The form to get
Okay.
the data out of it. I'm just not sure like what you're describing with the target.
Okay.
I guess.
All right. So the form is the target.
We want the data from the form, but we'll take that data we get out and put it somewhere else.
Bingo, right? Once the user submits, right? So what's the event on a form that allows us to do that?
On submit.
Yeah, right? So the event here is on submit. And what should the name of our method be, knowing the naming context that we're trying to shoot for?
Probably handle API call or something along those lines.
Okay. I'm going to say handle submit because handle submit is the action.
Okay.
Right? That's the method. Like the event that it's triggering it is the submit. So I'm going to say handle that, right? Cool. We have that. What would be the next thing that we would be targeting here? What's the next thing? Before you submit, when we had gone through the inputs, we had set up something to capture those inputs. As the user types, we capture that info in the input. We don't wait for it to complete. We did this the other day. Anybody remember?
There's like a handle change function that you have
Got
to
it.
do so you can
So
update
let's call this handle change. Okay? Which means, and now let's backtrack it. Handle change, what is the event name?
On change.
Got it. Okay, and what element are we going to target for that?
The form.
The input, right? We're already targeting the form. The form has when they submit. But as the user types, they're typing away, we're capturing every letter that they type, we're storing it in state, and then state rewrites it into the input form. Okay? This is not an instance where we just type text, then we click submit, and then we go to the input to grab the text. No, what we're actually going to be doing is inside of state, we are going to store what the user was typing inside of the input. Okay? That's why we need this thing here. Okay? The reason why we have that is so that we take control of the input. When it comes to inputs, there's controlled and uncontrolled ways of doing it. We are doing it as a controlled way of doing it. Okay, there is another way. Control methods are better because they allow you to do possibly, sometimes syntax checking, validation checking. There's lots of things that we can do when it comes to this. So this is what we're doing. Like, this is our setup. And so what I think we have now, we could get started with this, where we could create our app. We're still going to have to spin up a Create React app. We know that we'll have a movie info form. We could follow the lecture and just put the form inside of app. Once again, I'd be more preferable to do form as its own thing, right? One small deviation. But we know the methods that we need. And so those methods are going to require what? What do the methods require? These two methods are going to be touching what? Possibly. And the methods up to today, we needed to do what? The keyword is?
Bind.
Bind, right? So these things, we need to bind them. This one and this one needs to be bound in the constructor, right? Not in state, but in the constructor, so that we have access to the keyword this, and we have access to this outside state, and all that other good stuff, right? That makes sense? Okay. This is how I would break up the app. Now, I'm doing this specifically so that when you work on your project and you're building out something with React, try to write it out like this. Whether it's on paper, whether somebody says, I'm just going to use my mouse and I'm going to do something, try to break it all down, because breaking it down, you start thinking about it. And if I said, hey everyone, I want you to build just the structure, no logic, no nothing, I could almost bet and probably say 15, 20 minutes, you can have an app running, you can have a movie info thing that just shows the title of something, you can have a form, you might have the methods created, but they're not doing what they need to do just yet. You would do the binding. I believe that that could be done relatively easily, right? This lecture is not really that hard. It's just making the fetch call. And it's just confirming everything that you've learned up to this point, okay? So I'm going to take a snapshot. I like it. Saved forever. I'm also going to save it here. Save screenshot. Cool. All right. I'm going to clear it. Clear all the drawings. Let me see if my imager is working. Is it? Sweet. So we have a nice little drawing of what we're trying to accomplish, right? Cool. Well, let's accomplish it, right? Let's get this thing done. So I select out the lecture, go into, let me get rid of this annotation. Go into the student examples and make sure you're at the top level. You don't want to be in products app. You don't want to be in this other Turner app. That was for the other two lectures that we didn't do. Once again, we opted to kind of free for all it and just kind of live code it. But we're here right now. And I only have these two things. And so we are going to spin up. I'm not going to discuss the API stuff. Once again, we know about that stuff. You'll see it in action. I'm going straight to mini movie app. That's what I want to do. Mini movie app. And in here, I'm going to use create React app to spin this up, right? I don't think we need NPX because I just do it as, do I do it as just CRA? Or do, it's been a while. Let me create React. I think I could just do this. Create React app and movies, right? Boom. Okay. So I'm just creating the app, spinning it up. Once again, make sure you are not in some child directory of the products app or anything else you've been working on. It's straight up this app and this app only. And that'll take a moment. Get everything downloaded, latest versions. Everything's going to work beautifully. And then we're going to work on that structure, okay? I'm going to try to build out the structure and then kind of go back and piecemeal some of the stuff. I'd rather get the structure of the app and then go back and say, now let's make the API call. Now that we have things working, let's make the API call. I think we can do that. Okay.
I actually still had to put the NPX.
Oh, you did? Okay.
It told me command not found without it.
I think it's because Joe has Yarn installed.
Oh, I do have Yarn installed, yeah.
Yep, that's why.
Okay. I'm just going to start it up, make sure it works. It's going to tell me port 3000 is already being used. So I'm going to start up another one. But be careful about these servers too, because my machine was running really slow earlier. And what I was doing was spinning up servers and just doing like Command Z and not realizing it. And then later on, I looked and I saw I had like 7 node servers all running up, and they were all like vying for my memory. My machine was running like crazy slow, but I could only find one of those things. Like only one was up. So I must have just kept like Command Z and then like going into the directory, spinning up another server. Just making sure that my thing works. Server movies is running. Okay, so just let me know when it's up and running. Open it up in Atom, needless to say. Get it opened up in Atom. We're gonna jump right into Atom and start working with it. Okay.
Also, don't forget to do the RM-RF.
Oh yes, yeah, I forgot about that. Let's go back to that. It's a good one. Otherwise, we won't. I'm gonna stop my server, do RM, RF, Git. Right? So I can see it, that there would be Git, because if I do ls-a, I see, I don't see here, I don't see .git. I see git ignore, but I don't see .git. That tells me that this directory is not, at least on my machine, is not a Git folder. Right? If I did Git, if I do Git anything now because the parent is a Git, it's going to show me that it's here. This just has a git ignore, but because I don't see a .git anything, it's not there. Okay. Did anyone do an ls and did they see .git? Anyone see it?
I've been checking and I haven't seen it yet.
You haven't, right? Yeah. So
No.
I don't. If you don't see it, then it's not there. And if you pushed up your previous labs and homeworks and everything, and when you look online, they are folders that you can go into. Then it's not doing that. This isn't always needed. So just do an ls-a. It shows you hidden files and folders. You'd know exactly what's going on. Once that happens, once again, now I'm going to do the npm start. I want to get the server up and running. Yes, yes. It'll open up the same browser window. Everything's good. Everything's solid, right? All right, so I'm going to kind of move that over there. We have this. And we are going to start coding away. Okay. We have our app, right? We have our index file, and our index file, we don't really touch the index. The index just kind of does its thing, but our app, we kind of want to, at this point in time, get rid of all this junk. We don't need all of this stuff. So we're going to get rid of everything from line 8 to line 21 and dump it. Okay, we don't even need the class app here. I mean, we could keep it there. Not sure it would do much. I'll get rid of it anyway. I'm sure there's some CSS styling for that. Save. Again, I go back here. There's nothing here. Go to developer tools. There's no real error. It's just, hey, logo is defined but never used. And that's because here is the logo that we will no longer be using. So best practice, if I'm not going to use logo, get rid of logo, right? Doesn't really make much sense. We may use app CSS. I mean, this thing isn't really going to be styled, so if you want to add some styling, you can. Okay? That's our bare bones thing, right? That's what it should look like right now, okay? So if we had to kind of go back to the design, right, we could either create a form element or just some form content. We could create both of these things and store in an app and then elevate them, just like the lab, right? The lab had you doing something and they're like, hey, now create this other thing and spin that thing off. So we could put everything inside of here if we wanted to, right? But let's see what we got. They want us to set up our form, right? And they're walking us through, you know, what it takes to do, hey, look, oh my God, get, post, put, delete. What is that? We all know what that is. There's no reason to kind of go into that as of right now. The tool that we will be using, though, is this tool called Fetch. Fetch is a new ES6 method for making API calls where you don't have to import any third-party tool. It's naturally built into ES6. So when you're at a loss, like, oh, do I want to use jQuery here? No way, because you're in React. You don't use jQuery. And so the question would be like, well, then how do I make API calls? Well, there's several other tools. Fetch is one of those tools. I think there was something up here that describes some of the other tools. Let me see. Just quickly see it. Here, there's other tools, right? There's more tools than that to make an API call. These tools are out there. I've never worked with this KY one. I have worked with Axios extensively, and Fetch is something we always do when we come to React. This requires that we install something. Fetch does not. Fetch is like, it's here. You can start using it. So I'm just going to kind of browse back down here. Explains what Fetch is doing. We're kind of talking about what we're going to be building here because we need to make an API call. So we need all the bells and whistles for making the API call. Right? The URL, the key, the query, this title, and this search URL also. We need all of these things in order for us to make a proper API call, at least the way that, the way the lecture's kind of all set up. So I'm going to go here, and in app, I'm going to put all of that information here, and so in app, I'm going to say, hey, let's add a constructor. Okay, constructor is going to take props. We are going to call super with props, and then in here we are going to do our thing. Right? What's our thing? Well, we're going to put things here like this dot state. We're going to create state, and state is going to have all of these properties here. Right? A base URL, an API key, a query, a movie tile. What I want to do is I don't really want to type out these properties. This is not about like, hey, what are all these properties? So I'm just going to kind of paste that in here, and I'll slack this out. If you want practice typing, it's not this that you should get practice typing in these text pieces here. It's everything else. So this looks like my constructor. I don't know. I'm going to just make sure I'm not erroring out because
Joe,
yeah.
You have to refactor it because that's actually a function. App is a function. We got to make it.
Oh, snap. You're right. I didn't even see that. So I wonder, did they change the create React app change? I always thought it was always a class. So class app. Oh yeah, so we have to do a few things here, right? We could do extends. Now we could do components. So if we do this, component, didn't even realize that, get rid of this. We have to then import what, React. Is it React? Right, no, here we go. Oh no, we imported React here. So I'm gonna say import React and component, right? It should work. Let me say something up with this. Here's my props. Oh, I don't have a render. There's a few things that didn't get set up here. All right. Let me make sure it all looks good, right? All right. I'm going to select this out. The structure. Now, it was my recollection that Create React App always created a class, right? And here they're like, hey, clean it up so we have this blank state. I'm just assuming that it was creating the class. Let me see the key. All right. Kind of make sure you have that structure. Make sure it's running without any errors. That's all. Okay. Thanks for pointing that out, Christian. We haven't gotten into using functional components. And I don't believe we are going to get into functional components. Functional components can't have state. Functional components cannot have custom methods. They're really dumb versions of components that are meant to output only HTML. They're not meant to render logic. They're not meant to hold on to their state. They are meant to return HTML and HTML only. Okay? There's less overhead on a functional component than there is on a class. Class requires a bit more memory. Functional component really doesn't require that kind of memory space that a class-based component does. Cool. And we know that render is that required method. We always need render. I mean, we're here, right? Might as well just do this. I mean, everyone's kind of we're getting set up also. You know, based on the image that we had 2 methods, right? And we can just add those methods just to get things started, right? We don't have to put anything in it. One would have been handle submit, and the other would have been handle change, right? Just getting things started. That's all. You know, maybe in here we put just a console log and say, hey, this is handle submit. Okay. And in here, I'll just say console.log. This is handle change. Okay, that's it. Just trying to set these up. Okay. Oh, you know what? Since we're here too, we'll just do the binding and then I'll take a snapshot of that and we'll say handle submit of this dot handle submit is equal to this dot handle dot bind this, all right, and this dot handle change and this dot handle change dot bind yes. All right. Did I spell something? Submit.
Line 15. 15.
You have submit.
Yeah.
So, oh, so here 2Ms? Right. Sweet. All right. So this is what we got. So this is the constructor along with our two methods. There we go. You got the base structure. You can start working with some other stuff. Once again, just putting placeholders, knowing that these methods are there. That's giving you the forethought that I need these things and we're going to use those things and we can add the logic in later. Just placeholders, you know, to let us know, hey, we got to go back to this thing. This is always going to be something that's kind of in the forethought of our minds. Okay? Sweet. Let's take a look. What are we going to do next? All right, well, I'm going to keep browsing down here. We just finished with this. Now they're having us set up the form. And I did mention that in this particular lab, form is not a component. Form is just HTML text that is inside of app. App itself is rendering out form. Okay, so we'll do it like it's here, and we can go back and refactor it to elevate form to be its own component, and then we can pass something down and pass something up, lift state up, since that seems to be what we've been focusing in on today, right? What's new about this? What's kind of a little bit new? Anyone recognize something they've never seen before?
The React
That
fragment.
fragment.
Yeah, okay. So React.fragment, right? Let's take a look. It's going to probably take us directly to the React docs. What's a common pattern in React is for a component to return multiple elements, right? That's what we always want to do. Fragments lets you group a list of children without adding extra nodes to the DOM. So instead of you adding a div and saying, I'm going to store these things in a div, React fragment is this kind of like pseudo element that won't get created but allows you to kind of write these children as though they were nested in something, but that something will never be displayed on the screen. That's what React fragment does. That's really what it is. Okay?
Invisible div, basically.
Basically an invisible div, but there won't be a div. There won't be anything on the screen. It's just like it will put these three elements onto the screen. So let's do that, right? So they're returning here a React fragment, right? So this is in our render. They're not using these divs anymore. Once again, their design. You're gonna follow the lecture. I gotta follow the lecture, right? So I'm gonna say React.fragment, right? And then we close this React.fragment. What you're gonna see in React is a concept of higher order components. Components. Can I not spell this? Components. And higher order components are always going to have something like a start and start. Okay, I'm just going to put comp. That would be the comp name, and then a closing comp, which is something you don't see very often, right? We haven't seen much of that. There's just a lot of app closes itself. You know, furniture closes itself. List item closes itself, but these need a closing reference. Okay, so that's what this is. It's kind of like a higher order component. There's a whole level, once again, to React. We went here to, I'm just seeing if it's in their advanced section, higher order components. There's a whole nother world of other stuff going on with React. Not going to go into it. I'm just referencing it. If you have time, by all means, take a look. But higher order components are a big deal in React. All right, so now I have the React component, and I'm going to add my form, right? So I'm going to have my form. I'm going to close my form. So again, I try to keep it open and closed so that then I can add it, so I never forget, right? My form is going to have all of this content. I'm just like you know, all sketchy about writing all this stuff out. Drives me crazy. You think I'm just going to copy the label? No, you know what? We'll write this out. No, I'll paste it. In our form, I'm going to say label, okay? HTML 4 is equal to movie title. This is for accessibility, right? Then we'll have the title, and then we'll do label, right? Then we're going to grab some input, right? And that input here, I'm going to end it. The input is going to have an ID that is equal to movie title, okay? It's type, right? Because it's an input, and we're going to capture their text. They're going to be typing stuff in. We're going to give it a value here. Now, it's giving all the information. It's kind of like doing it all at once for us without us really kind of setting up everything, I suppose, or walking through the need. But I'm going to say state.movie title. But this is something we have done. And then it's adding the on-change method. This dot handle change, right? And that's our handle change. Handle change is bound. Okay. They're also adding here an input. Once again, I'm going to close my input. Always have my opening and close, just makes it easier. And I'm going to say type is a submit button. And the value is going to be equal to find movie info. Okay? That's our form. Well, we'll add the rest. Let me put this here. Okay? Once again, I'm going to maybe make sure I don't have any errors. Do I have any errors? Nothing's breaking. This is awesome. Nothing's like screaming at me. I got an input. Here's the input, right? Which really means, based on our console, based on our creating these methods ahead of time, adding console logs, we have an on change, right? And if we were to type in here, it says that it's changing, right? Right. I'm just clicking on keywords. It's saying that it's changing, but it's not putting anything in there. Does anyone know why? Anyone have an idea as to why you don't see what you type in there now?
Because you haven't set up the state properly yet.
Sure. The other reason is, that's good. The other reason is because we've given control over to React. We're telling React, hey, you manage this input now. This is your thing. You manage it, right? And it's this value. There's nothing in value, right? So, you know, if I went up to, do we have value? We don't have value here. So we're going to have to go up there and add it. Oh, no, we have movie title, right? So here's movie title. If I was like Batman, let's see, it'll work. There's Batman, right? Anything in here now will go down here. So one, we gave React control. And we're telling it, well, only what's in your state do you get to see there. So we need to get that stuff into state. Okay? Just going to remove the hard code Batman. If you want to test it out, by all means, test it out. Okay? Where we're at. We'll get to the next one in just a minute. This.state.search URL. I don't necessarily think, I'm going to take a look at the real app. Do we need the search URL? I don't think they're outputting the search URL here. Doesn't really look like it. But they do have the search URL. We'll get to the search URL. That's the full URL for when we go to that movie. Okay? So now that we have the form, we'll just add it for the sake of, you know, having all this here, getting all the kind of the HTML done, right? Is this dot state dot search URL, right? It's an anchor tag, so they're going to click on, they're going to go someplace, so it's the same thing. So I'm just going to copy this instead of writing the whole thing. You could just copy it. And then,
Line 35, you have type instead of type text.
oh, yep, thank you. And then here, we're just going to close the anchor tag. All right, that should be the structure, the final structure. Gonna make sure no errors, still no errors, everything looks good. Again, if I type on keys, it's cool. If I submit, oh, why does it refresh? We don't like that.
I forgot to put the prevent default.
Correct, right? Events prevent default needs to be the first thing in the submit. Otherwise, it's always going to submit something, right? So we want to make sure that when we do submit it, that we don't have that event. And so for on submit, we want to pass in event, and we want to do event.prevent default. Okay? That's it. So our submit button should look just like that. A few little tweaks. Awesome. Pretty easy so far. This is just a lot of, once again, I mistyped something, you know, still worked, right? It was still triggering it. I wonder later on if we would have seen like, doesn't know what to do with type. Maybe that would have been a big issue. Okay. Okay. So they do have the information here, and we'll use this key. I think everyone has their own OMDB key. So if we use this key, we may use it too much. Everyone's just going to keep doing it, and so it may kind of break. We can give it a shot. If at any point in time it's like, hey, OMDB key, yada, 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 we can use our own key. Okay? But right now, in our state, we have, I'm just going to move this up. We have a base URL, right? Oh, we already have it. Yeah, this is already set up. No reason. We got it done. We have our submit. Sweet. The only two things here is in handle change, in handle submit, we need to do something, right? So I'm going to go to handle the order of these. Well, they put change here and submit there. Hopefully this doesn't throw anyone off. So I'll start with handle change, since handle change is the first one in the list, right? So here we go. I don't need the console log anymore because I know that handle change works, right? I can remove it. I just wanted to test it. When we capture something, we are going to store that thing someplace. And so we're going to say this dot set state. Okay, so here's the thing, right? When we put in our form, in our inputs, we have this thing, event.target.id, and that's going to be equal to whatever we get as a value, right? So this event here, right here, is the event. So it looks like we have to pass in to handle change also the event, because I'm seeing a little error there. Okay, so we need to pass that in. Can anyone walk me through what's happening here? So let's see.
Isn't it targeting the ID of down below on your form? Because each thing doesn't have its own ID.
Sure. So this has an ID, right? Exactly. So this will really translate into a key name. That's what that's going to translate into. This will be enumerated as the key, right? Movie title, and that'll be movie title. And we have a movie title key here. And so that turns into movie key. And then we can add the value. So it's just kind of a dynamic way of like, since part of the information of what we're trying to target in state is in the actual elements, let's use that piece of information to determine the key. So this alone would allow me to create as many have as many elements target the same handle change and know that I'm targeting the right key value pair inside of state, okay? So this is just a React way of doing it, okay? So we know if we do this, we would push it into title, right? And that should work, right? I'm assuming without doing anything with submit yet, if I went back here, let's take a look like that. Oh, look, now it's working. Okay, so that's working. And I'll submit. So I'm gonna make sure your handle change is working. Okay, confirm handle change is working. Confirm you see it there. And we can move on, okay? I think for the submit, I think that's got like copy and paste written all over it instead of typing this all out. Okay. So I am going to go out of my way to write in handle submit. I'm going to get rid of that because I know that that already works. I am going to say this dot set state because I want you just getting more practice writing this dot set state. But I don't really want to type all this out, right? There's some concatenation there. Could have used template literals to do it. Not sure why concatenation was used there. And so that's what we want our handle submit events to look like, okay? Just the basic structure. We're getting everything done. We have search URL here, which will have the full URL of what it would take to go to OMDB, along with the key, along with the query, whatever title you typed in. So what do you think we're going to do with search URL? Jose, what do you think we're going to do once that's inside of state, search URL? How is that going to be useful for us?
Sorry, I was catching up.
Okay.
It's going to be used to make the API call?
Sure, right? Okay, that makes sense. I mean, once we submit, we put this thing in state, and then we're also going to be making an API call, and we're going to reference the search URL in states in order to make the call, right? So it's kind of doing two things for us. It's going to be some sort of holder here as an anchor tag where somebody could like click on it and maybe go to the movie, right? And it's going to be the URL that we use to make the API call to get the data back. That's ultimately what it's going to be, okay? And so if we constructed it like this, once again, if we did that, and we used our key, the key that's in here, we should get back all the data, right? So I'm just gonna copy paste that. I'm gonna grab the key that's here. This key should work. I think it should work. Hope it works. Let me see. There we go. Okay, so if you want to test that our string works fine and you get back data, there you go. Just put it in there. We could use Postman now to get it if we want. You can just type it in there. Getting JSON. What makes this JSON? So if you were like, hey,
An object of key value pairs.
okay, well, an object is key value pairs, right? So what makes
double quotes on the key and the values?
Yes, double quotes, key values. Double quotes around the keys and the values. That's important to know. Can't be single quotes, has to be double quotes. Very, very specific, okay? Even numbers here. Integers are strings at this point.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah.
Did you test out the search bar? Because if you type in a movie in the search bar, it gives you a link, and if you click the link, it automatically goes.
Oh, because because we're doing that here.
Okay.
Yeah, we've already set up. We're not making an API call though at that instance. I know what you're saying. So if I do Superman, right? Superman. Oh, I don't see it. It's not giving me back anything here.
Yeah. See, on mine, it gives me that whole link, and I can click the link and jump to the information.
Yeah, I don't see why
Hey,
mine.
Joe?
Yeah.
It looks like your form needs the on submit.
Oh, I didn't add the on submit. There. Thank you. On submits. I think I left out the on submit because I wanted to go back to the on submit and say, so on submits is going to be this dot handle submit, right? All right. So now if I do that and I do a Superman, there we got, that's our URL. You type in that, it's going to take us there, right? Oh, works. Okay. So we know that portion's working. Everything is kind of flushed out at this point in time. And the only thing left is really this new thing, this new handle fetch thing. That's really the kind of the basis. So I can see how like the setup takes some time, right? I want to learn how to do fetch, but I got to do like all this other stuff just before I can do fetch. And I got to work through any possible issues that I might have. Once again, like forgetting to do this, fat fingering things. All right. So we know that when they submit, that is when we are going to make this particular call, okay? And so there is this fetch function that's going to do it for us, okay? So in handle submits, after we've set state, right, after we've done all of that, we are going to then run our fetch call, okay? So I'm just going to put in here a note. Fetch is the fetch allows us to make API calls and comes with ES6. It was a new thing for ES6. In order to make the calls, fetch was the tool. It was a new thing. All right, well, we need a URL to make a fetch. This is no different than $AJAX and putting in a URL. So I'm going to say, hey, this dot state dot search URL. All right, we made a fetch call. What's the issue here, though, if we make the fetch call? I mean, there's some pieces missing. You might look through the lecture and be like, oh, I know what we're missing. But if I make the fetch call, what's happening? I made it. What do we need to do?
Don't we have to do something with the information we're getting back?
Sure, right? And if I said that fetch is a promise, what would you say? If I was like, hey, Lauren, I promise that if you do this, what's the next word out of my mouth? Like, I'm going to do something for you. What would be the next word? If you do this for me, I will
Then
do something for you, right? So that's exactly what we need. We need dot then, okay? Now the dot then takes, it's a response. We're getting a response back from the server, fat arrow here. What it's going to do is return. Now here's something we haven't done before, response.json. Okay. What's the format we're getting the data back from the server? Matthew, what's the data that we're getting back from the server? What is it? What type of format is it?
In this particular instance?
Sure. Before this thing runs, what is the data? The data type at that moment?
That's a good question. I'm out.
How about you phone a friend? Who do you want to pick on? Ask.
Oh,
Yeah, I know, right? I wanted to do this earlier today. It returns something of a certain type. There is an object, but that object isn't yet an object. The reason why we're doing what?
Promise.
No, it is some sort of data type.
And parse data?
So I'm going to show you something. There's this thing called JSON.parse, and there's JSON.stringify. Okay? What does stringify, do you think stringify does?
Creates a string.
All right, sweet. So if it creates a string from a piece of JSON, what do you think parse does? Okay.
Takes it out of the string.
Yeah. So let obj is equal to, I'm just going to create an object, and we'll do like, hey, name Joe, right? Here we go. Dad, you answered it. It's your lucky day. You were the center of my object's attention. So we have this object, and I want to do this. I want to do JSON.stringify. Get ready, Thad. I'm going to stringify you. Boom. You've been stringified. Bam. Okay? Now the object is a string. I can't click into it. I can't drop it down. I can't do anything. It is a string of text. But I'm like, what am I going to do with a string of text? I need to grab those properties. I need to go thing.name. So I'm going to say like, you know, s or obj string is equal to that, right? And now if I do obj string, right? I want the name, .name. Ugh, whoa, what the hey, man? I want the object. What'd you do to my object? Well, we want to do JSON.parse, and now I do obj string. And look, Thad, you're back. You're back, buddy. I got you back, all right? The reason why I'm going down this road is because I want you to understand that fetch is getting the data back. What AJAX did for you, AJAX was like, hey, I'm just going to parse it under the hood. You don't even have to tell me what to do. I'm going to do it. Fetch is like, I don't know. We got this data back. Came back as a string. So if you want to play with the data in any way, shape, or form outside of it being a string, you need to unstringify it or parse it. And so that's what this is doing. Okay, so I'll put a note here that .json converts the string into an object. That is how servers send their data. They send it as a string of text. It's more efficient to send a string of text than it is an object. Okay? That's all you need to know. When you're doing fetch, just know that you need to take on the added burden of converting it, and then you get the pleasure of working with the data. All right, so here I'm just going to say console log, you know, JSON, and we'll see the JSON. They're also putting the error in here. Once again, I kind of like doing a catch. Once again, that's just kind of how I like it. I think we can do this. Console log. Okay. I kind of like doing it like this. I might even move this to the next line, have the thens on their own. That's how I like to write it. You can do it like this. Perfectly fine. I kind of like it like this. Okay. And if we submit now in our terminal, right, or in our console, we should see, you know, I'm gonna test it first before I give it out. Batman, boom. Unexpected token at JSON 0. So line 29, return, what am I doing? Response.json. All right, did I misspell this? I don't think I did. Response.json, then we're doing JSON console log JSON. So something is not copacetic right here because I did not see it. I've seen this happen. Yep.
If I'm reading the notes right, it looks like where your cursor is, you have an extra parentheses.
Oh, yes. Okay. No, I think it's breaking now. So let me take a look. No, we need that there because we have the then. This closes that. That closes that. Fetch, catch. Maybe the catch. No, catch doesn't have it either. Is it working for anyone else? Once again, I'm getting unexpected token. This tells me it's not able to do. I've seen this like a million times already. Unexpected token.
I'm getting the same error.
So let me just take a quick look and see. Am I typing? I'm going to use their syntax.
You're missing a comma after the console log JSON for the, unless is it? Oh, wait,
Oh no, that came from
the
there.
catch. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm just going to do this once again. Anytime I'm like, what's happening? I'm just going to copy and paste. Make sure maybe it's a syntax thing on my side, and I'm still getting it, right? I'm still getting this thing. It looks like there's a syntax error. So let me walk this through. I'm going to say this is error. I just want to make sure, like, is that the error that's outputting here? Yeah, see, this is error. It's the error that's being output. There's something not copacetic here. Okay, so I'm going to take a look, and I'm just going to see response, return response.json, right? Return response. So this should be JSON right here. So this is happening because the URL, something's wrong with the URL. Right? The URL looks good up here, but when we run it here, it's not working. For some reason, it's not returning the data. And that's what error is saying, right? Because I'm clearly getting this is error, syntax error, unexpected token. So it's not doing it. So I'm going to try something. I'm going to
Hey, Joe.
Yeah.
In the notes, it says that fetch goes in a callback, but I don't, is that, I can't tell from your, so if you scroll up a little bit, keep going, a little more. It's, yeah, so it has it like that as a callback within, like, as a second argument to set state. Does that, I couldn't tell from your code if that was how it was. I just wasn't sure if that might.
Oh, I get it. So this is, now I get it. I did miss that part. So here's what's happening. When we set the URL, there's a delay. So the issue is here, and I believe there's a gotcha. So I missed the gotcha here, okay? The gotcha is this. When we set state, there is a little bit of a delay. Now that delay is enough to say that by the time fetch runs on its own, set state hasn't completed yet. There is no search URL there. Like that has not been defined yet in state. So this is like search URL what? Like state hasn't finished running yet, so I don't really know what search URL is. That's what's happening here. Because if I took those URLs and I put it here, if I hard-coded the URL that we had for the movie, like if I took this and I hard-coded it here, I'd just say, hey, I already know the URL and I want you to go there. This should work. I'm going to test it out. I get the data. Right? Because it's hard-coded, it's there. So the issue that's happening is that when set state runs, search URL has not completed its thing yet, so there is nothing here. So what we're going to do then is to set it as a callback here, which means we wait until set state is complete, then we run the callback. Okay? So I'm going to go back here. It's going to get rid of that for now, that note. I'm going to go here, and we will refactor this to put in our callback, right? So it would be comma, curly brace, right? And now we need to know where to end these curly braces, right? So this curly brace here, and then a parens there. It should end it. Let me just test this out. My React app seems to be working, and it works. All right, so this is it. Let me select this out. This is our whole handle submit, okay? Good looking out, Molly. I've written it in other ways where I didn't do the callback. I think how I've done it before is actually have another method in here, like make API call. And then we can, once that's done, we can like trigger the API call to run, something like that. Or give it a set timeout. Another way could have been something like, hey, set timeouts, and then say, hey, wait, 1 second before you make this fetch call. This could have been another way to give set state the time it needs to do it. Okay? But this callback here, right, is how we're telling set state. So set state's going to say, when I am done setting state, hey, you can do whatever you want. If you need to retrieve data, that data will be there, and everything should be working accordingly. Okay? And I think, right, fetch. Now they're also showing us here that fetch does allow us to use other methods. We can get, we can post, we can put, we can delete. Fetch will say, hey, I will send whatever methods that you want to send. You tell me, I'll send it. We don't need to do this because by default, this construct by itself is the default get message. We don't have to do anything, okay? I just want to make sure. Everything's good, everything working, or did all my typos just kind of...
Yeah, you want to do a break real quick?
Oh, yeah. Let's do a break. Completely forgot about that. 5:08, come back at 5:18. Thanks, Jeremy.
Hey, Joe, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Like, looking at this closer, the part, like I was adding a bunch of console logs just to try to understand where stuff is coming from.
Sure.
The part I'm not getting is like where the JSON info is actually coming from. So like on yours, between line 25 and 26, I just did like a console log in there and did the response.json, and that's returning me like a promise. So where is that actually like fetching that data? Or like if I just log the response, like I'm not seeing any data within that object.
No, that data is, and I've done this too. Once again, I was always curious, like, hey, maybe I will actually see the stringified version of it, right?
Yeah.
That's what I always thought. Hey, this is JSON, and let's do response JSON, right? So let's take a look. I think where it's coming from is I'm not going to do JSON. I'm going to do, this is response. Because this is doing something. So I'm just going to take a look at response and see what we get, right? So does it still fail to compile? What do I do now?
I think you missed a parenthesis after response.
Oh, yes.
On 26.
Okay. All right. So here we go. Do Batman. And this is JSON, and we get a response. It's somewhere in here. Like this readable stream is where it's at. I think I like one day try to go all the way down and just kept like going through and going through. I think I found it somewhere in here because that's the only place that I can see where something may be. I can't see anywhere else where there's drop downs where other data would be. So my assumption is that it's in this readable stream that it's taking this readable text and then doing the JSON on it. That's my assumption.
And is that, I guess looking at that, would that then be a function of, or not like a true function, but I mean, is that it's abstracted in that way by fetch? Because I'm thinking of like our past AJAX stuff. It was just right there in that response, like when we were doing jQuery.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of just how fetch works. Is it just hides it somewhere, and we just know if we call JSON on that response, that will then get us the right stuff. It's somewhere.
It's probably going into that promise and grabbing the body and then doing something to the body.
Got it.
Because that's response, right? This is response, and then response itself has this method JSON. But I don't see anywhere here where it's like, hey, response has a method, because we're looking at the data inside of response, not like the methods on response, right? Once again, it's kind of like one of these magical things. What is it doing? I don't know. I mean, I know what it's doing based on these methods. Like I know what stringify and parse does, and I know when I'm working with other API tools what to look for.
Mhm.
You know, if I see something that's referenced to like, oh, we need to stringify or parse it, I know that, and I know to look for those.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was kind of confusing, like thinking all responses should be the same when really, like before we used jQuery, now we're using fetch, so they each have their own ways of passing that data. So
Yeah. Mhm.
if I were to actually look at in Postman the actual response, they would be the same,
Yes, they
right?
would be the
But
same.
we
They would
don't
be the
look
same
down
thing.
to that level.
Exactly.
Cool.
Axios.js. I was just looking here. Axios is also another one of those things that you can use to like make an API call. And here, Axios.get. You give it the ID, and it does. You don't need to do in Axios. You don't need to do response.json. It does it for you.
Gotcha.
Okay, but you're used to seeing get. You might have seen that with jQuery.
Yeah.
But get as a method inside of the thing, inside of the app.
Awesome. Well, thanks. That makes a lot of sense.
All right. I'm just going to step away. I'm going to get some water, and I will come right back. All right, we're back. So the only thing left, we're getting the data. The only thing left that we truly need to do is to create that movie info component and have it render data, right? The only other thing left. Everything else seems to be working fine. We're getting the data. Our handle change works, allows us to type. Handle submit works, allows us to submit. Fetch is working now with this callback here. Everything seems to be working fine. Let's go ahead and now create a new component, right? That we're going to use for our movie info. So I'm going to go into source here. I'm just going to new folder, and I'll call the folder components. I'm going to call it components. And inside of components, I'll create a new file called movieinfo.js. Okay? And so movie info, I'm just gonna make sure that my thing's working fine. Okay. So we're going to import. We have to do the whole thing, like import React component from React. Right? We don't need the semicolons here. That'll work just fine without it. Then we need to create a class. This actually doesn't need to be a class-based component. Let me see why it keeps pushing me down. I want to go to that. All right, class movie info extends component. Okay. Now that we've imported this, we want to export default movie info. Okay. So we import React and components from React. I need that. I really don't care for the semicolons. And I don't know why this is telling me warning. React is defined but never used. Yeah, that's fine. Push it. Okay. Having our structure here, I'm just going to go back here and, you know, all of this content, I don't really want to write out all that content. I will do the render, because that's a requirement. Return, that's also. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this text, all this HTML, only because we're kind of pressed for time too. I want to get you into the lab, give you some time for the lab. And so that is our component, our movie component. Okay. Looks good. No errors here. Everything seems to be pretty solid as of right now. Creating a movie component essentially means we want to use the movie components. We're going to be using the movie component inside of our app, right? That's where we're going to be using it. So it only makes sense inside of our app to say import movie info from components. Where's that? Let's see. Yeah, dot components. Dot components / movie info. We don't need the JS, right? Should know that it's a movie component. Sure, everything looks good, nothing's broken. I'm just getting a message, movie info is defined but never used. Okay, no biggie. Make sure you import it. Should be all set to start using this movie info component. All right, it's expecting things. right? The movie info is expecting to have props, got movie title, movie year, movie poster, movie genre, movie. So it's expecting this thing. So let me ask you a question. From looking at movie info, right? What would we actually be passing down to movie? What do you think gets passed down? How many things are we passing down? How about Josh? You're so quiet over there, man. Josh.
I am not sure.
Okay. I'm going to say take a look at it. Take one look at it. What do you see as the common denominator for all of those things?
Movie?
Correct, right? And what type of thing is movie?
It's an object.
Correct. So we must be passing down the whole object, and then we're allowing movie info to elicit those values out. So we don't have to pass down title is equal to, this.state.movie. Year is equal to this.state.movie.year. Like, we don't need to do that in our app. I can just say, take the whole thing. You elicit whatever values you want from it when you want it, but here's the whole thing. So knowing that this common denominator here is movie, that's essentially what we will be passing down to the movie thing, right? Okay, so let's take a look. All right, before we pass down movie, the question is, do we have movie? Do we have a movie object to pass anywhere? No. In state, I see movie title, I see search URL. Our fetch would get the movie object, but I still need to pass the movie object, okay? So what we're seeing here is this kind of like, I'm gonna move this fetch over just a little bit, because what looks like it's happening now, I'm gonna move this over, is watch this. State is run here to set state. That set state sets the URL. Then there's a callback. And the callback says, hey, once state's finished doing its thing, hey, you run your thing. And we're like, cool, I'm gonna run my thing. It gets the data because now I have a URL to capture. When we get to this then though, once again, it does the JSON, returns it to JSON. Before we just console log this thing, we don't want to just console log this thing anymore. Okay, what we want to do here is to store it in state, right? So instead of console logging this data now, what we would do is say, hey, I got the data, this dot set state. And in state, I'm going to say, hey, the movie key is the JSON data that I got. And I'm going to set the movie title back to nothing. Why is that? Why would I go out of my way to set the movie title back to nothing? What I do, Justin, why would I do that? Why would I set movie title back to nothing?
So you can, does that basically reset the form?
Yeah, it resets. Yeah, it clears out the input, right? The user is already submitted, and it's our job as the developers now that we control the input, that we need to clear the input so the user doesn't have to like wipe out the data and then type something. That's just bad UX altogether. Okay. So now that we have that, we have the movie, right? Once again, I'm gonna make sure nothing's broken. Nothing's broken as of yet, right? Still, everything seems to be working. Okay, so all we did was for fetch was to do this. Okay, this is our full fetch call, right? That's our full fetch. Just gonna put it in there. That's all our fetch. And now we need to pass that data down, and we're going to pass that data down here. Now, why do you think we're running this? What is happening there? The lines that I highlighted, what would you call that? It's a word in React, like a concept.
The ternary.
Ternary operator, and a ternary operator falls under the broader scope of what? What kind of logic? Begins with a C.
Conditional.
Yeah. It's conditional logic, right? Ternary operator is just an if-else statement. That's just one line of code. Why are we doing this, though? Why are we putting the conditional logic here? What's possible? What possibly could happen? Why don't I just put movie info and just pass movie? What could potentially be the issue?
Because there might not be a movie.
Yeah, there may be, maybe the site's down. Maybe OMDB is down also, and we didn't get the movie data, right? We don't want to like error out. If we pass something and that component is expecting the something and it doesn't get the something, then it's going to error out. So we're putting the conditional logic to say, hey, only if we got movies should we execute this thing. Otherwise, don't do anything. Like, just have an empty thing. That's what we're doing here, okay? So in our form right here, right, we had our form. Seems like they removed the anchor tag earlier, so we don't need the anchor tag anymore. We could keep it. No, I might just keep it there. I like having the anchor tag there. We're going to run our conditional logic. What we're going to say is this dot state dot movie. Hey, we get a movie. We're going to rock and roll this thing. We are going to, oops, just going to go to the next line. We will show the movie info components. I will pass in the movie property and define it as this dot state dot movie. I'll pass in the whole object. I'll close it. And then I'll say, or do nothing. Okay? So I'm going to move this question mark down here also because it kind of makes more sense, right? Makes more sense like that. Question mark, they're both stacked upon each other. That's what's happening here. This conditional logic is the logic that will decide on whether our little movie thing renders or not, okay? I think that's pretty much it, right? This looks good. I'm thinking we got everything. Movie title, console log error, yada, yada. I think we're set. Unless I'm erroring out here. I'm going to type Batman. Batman. Sweet.
So I don't see this dot state dot movie up in the state declaration at the top.
Okay. So let's do this. We don't see it there, right? So I'm going to go to the top of render, and I'm just going to console log and say this is state and do this dot state. Let's just see what state has, right? Okay. I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to take a look, and I'm going to refresh my page, and here is state. And you are correct that there is no movie key in here, right? Okay. I am going to type in Batman again. Boom. And look at state now. Is there a movie key?
Yeah,
right? So like any object, Jeremy, you can extend the object's key value pairs any time you want.
So that gets set when we do the submit.
Yeah.
It's adding that to it.
I probably, in all honesty, I probably would have done this. You know, is it an object? I might have done something like that. Or done, it's null, right? I still don't want a movie to like show until there's something there. I would set it in state ahead of time so that when people look at state, they know, oh, there's going to be this movie thing and it's going to have some data, right? That's what I would do. You know, I wouldn't magically update it later on. I would want my key value pairs to be there. I think we kind of banged that one out. That wasn't, outside of little typos. Sometimes following the lecture throws me off the way I would do it. In some of the ways I've done it before, but what are we feeling in regards to like questions about this? Did it seem pretty intuitive, like what we were trying to do? The only new things here were really just making a fetch call, introducing fetch. Really it, kind of explaining that.
So the dot at the end of that last statement that we just put in there, that's just saying if you don't get anything, like there's no movie, just do that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. It could have been an if statement. You could have been like, if this, then return that, but ternary operator, you're going to see ternary operators all over the place in React. Cool. Yeah, I almost think, something like this, maybe the structure could have been there and we just throw in fetch, something like that. There's a lot of setup for it. Part of it, it's like, hey, let's review it. I think at times, like, you got this. You can jump right into fetch. But how's everyone feeling with just React in general? Comfortable? All right, and then let's do this. Let's just take a poll. Let's see. How is everyone feeling about React? Not good. Like it. Fonts. Side. Love it. Boom. Keep forgetting to do the anonymous, but tell me how you're feeling. Want to do more before you decide. Whoa. Reactors love it. I'm in the love it. And Thad, we will, by the end of it, you'll be jumping right into love it. You're going to make it directly from, forgot the ER, but learning to like it.
Better than anything else.
Yeah. Everyone in there will one day wind up in the love it portion. Yeah. It really is one of those technologies that once you start getting used to it, it really has this structure and it really makes it easy to do stuff. You are just scratching the surface, though, of React, in all honesty. There's lots more to React. There's all that advanced React concepts. There's even things like React Router, which is an additional library created by another team that does React. So there's a lot going on. There was a time, Tyler, I had signed up for this a while back. Tyler McGinnis, he's like one of the React experts, like the React expert out there. And he had several courses on just learning React fundamentals. It's all React, like React fundamentals. He's got some modern JavaScript, some advanced JavaScript. Redux is a React thing. React Router, React fundamentals, React Native. There was a time I was going to study for the Udacity React Nano degree. I was just like, man, I'm going to be the React dude. I'm going to get the Nano degree, and I'm just going to be, but, I thought to myself, do I really need it? Spend all that time. But yeah, React Native is my next thing. React Native is my next pursuit. I really want to learn how to work with mobile. Sweet. Okay, well, that's good. The feedback is pretty good, looking good. All right. So, let me see. We're not going to have time to get into the lab and assign homework, so the homework is going to be the lab, which I'm sure some of you are like, this is great. And let me see here. Oh, Jerica, jazz it up. Look at you, Jerica. Made it all nice and pretty. All right. Let me do this. Capture that feedback. So I'm going to send out the exit ticket feedback once again, just, give us as much info as you can. Any feedback, help tomorrow's lectures. And yeah, we know how it goes. So I'm gonna have you fill out the feedback, and then Jerica will give out the homework. Boom. Go off to the races. Give you about maybe 10 minutes.
We're getting a need permission error.
Oh, you're getting, let me see. Jerica, are you there?
Yeah, hold on, give me a second.
Yeah, okay. You just tanked the whole lecture, Jerica. Tanked it. Are they good to go, Jerica?
All right, try it again.
Yeah, try it again. Is it good? Everyone good? Awesome. Sweet.
So I'm just going to go ahead and announce the homework now, and then you guys are free to go afterwards because, of course, we're coming up to the end of the day. So for homework today, I posted the link in Slack, and I'll go ahead and, I'm already sharing my screen. So tonight's homework is just going to be, you're going to be practicing, of course, making AJAX calls and, of course, just making an app with React. What you're going to do is make JService again. If you don't remember that, that was from last unit. You guys did this with Angular. You made a Jeopardy kind of app. You're going to build basically the same exact thing, but this time, of course, with React. So you've already built this app before. You just need to kind of translate it now into React. So you're going to be going ahead and using the JService API again. So that's what you're going to be practicing fetch with. And then your app should basically be the same as what you did last time. So your app should let the user click on some button that will generate, or not generate, but it will grab random trivia data from the JService API. You should display the category, the actual trivia question, how much points the question is worth. And then, of course, the answer should be kind of hidden so that when the user just clicks on the button that says show me the solution, they'll be able to see the answer. And that's basically the app that you're going to be building today. So again, same one as you did with Angular, just this time build it with React. And then of course, if you're hungry for more, the same kind of options are down here. Yeah, so that's it for today's homework. Any questions before we let you guys go?
So CSS is not the MVP part, right?
Yeah, no, it's just the MVP is the functionality. So we do ask you to add some styling or some color to it, but it does not have to match the mockup at all.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, cool. Then great job, you guys, today. We'll see you guys tomorrow.